Welcome to another episode of Get Paid for Your Pad. Today it's STR Conversations. We are your hosts, Jesper Rivers and Eric Mutter, and we are talking about buying hotels because we are might be buying one. What's up, Eric?
What's up, dude? I mean, we might be buying our second hotel here, which is, I mean, we were just saying this before we started recording, how crazy of a statement that sounds, like we're buying a hotel. You know what's funny, man? Like I've been talking to quite a bit of people, obviously for Legends X, the hectic hosts that want to grow, but also like Legends Mastermind is growing. We have a couple of new members, companies in that mastermind, and the bigger the companies get in the short-term rental space, it just naturally feels, and the more that the industry is changing and laws are changing for short-term rental space, more and more people are buying and getting into boutique hotels. And I know this is nothing new. It's kind of new for us because we're now just making that decision to go in there. But as we're mapping out Freewyld and we're trying to ask ourselves, like, what's the best way to scale this business without having to leverage other people's properties, like not focusing on rental arbitrage or management. It comes down to buying properties that you can legally run as short-term rentals forever,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the towns that we're looking into, we have these really awesome opportunities of old mom and pop boutique hotel operators that want to get out. And but yeah, I mean, so we're going to talk about that, right? We'll break down this boutique hotel that we're looking at and why it's attractive to us, but the whole thing, we'll get into those numbers. But yeah, I just think like this is the next natural phase of like once you figure out how to scale a short-term rental business and you learn how to raise money, buying these types of deals only makes sense because we can run these as short-term rentals, but we have the equity of a hotel, which
Mm-hmm.
is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Especially since there's so many regulations now in all these markets, right? It's not so easy anymore to just buy a bunch of properties and put them on Airbnb. But
Right.
like in our market, I always think like you got to look at the regulations now, but also think like how might these change
Right.
in the future? Because like you buy something and then 3 years from now there's a new law, then you have a big challenge. So it makes sense, right,
Or
to
yeah.
do it this way.
Or a lack of laws, right? Like what we learned
Hmm.
down in Mexico with the legends, having one legend who kind of owns a huge majority of his market in short-term rentals, but there's no actual laws in place for short-term rentals in single family homes, and he's having a challenge selling his portfolio to a REIT who would come in there and acquire, it's like $100 million portfolio, right? But he's having a challenge selling it because there's actually no laws in place. And the REITs who can actually acquire something that big are a little concerned about investing into that model because there's actually no laws. So if something comes into place, they could be out of business, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, all of these things are kind of leading us towards buying these opportunities. And what Freewyld is kind of shaping into is a company of acquiring cabins, acquiring boutique hotels, and then eventually acquiring single family homes in short-term rental regulated areas where we have the legal rights to run it. So but yeah, man, let's talk about this new hotel. We are, for the listeners, kind of holding back some information because we're still in negotiations right now. The situation is really interesting with the sellers. We'll talk about like how we found it and a little bit of the situation. But we're gonna hold back the name of the hotel, the location of the hotel, but it's in these markets that we really like, right? So we'll talk about that. But let's get into it, man. Like what's your overall thoughts on this hotel and what came up for you as you were running through the numbers?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, we've been looking at a number of hotel, right? Especially in the last few months. It seems like there's more of a buyer's market now, or at least it's not so much of a seller's market anymore. Last year when we bought this property in Idlewild, it came up and it was like, all right, you got 2 days to put in an offer, and otherwise somebody else will just buy it right off. It's
Yeah.
like it was crazy, right? And the last few months, also in our Legends Mastermind, like people have been bringing up these deals, and they stay on the market for a while, or they go under contract and then it falls, it doesn't go through. That's, I think, the first realization that I'm having in the last few months is like, okay, we no longer have to like rush into these. We
Right.
actually have some time to, to look at these deals. And number two, I don't know, this one I'm just really excited about it. Like we've looked
Why
at
are
some
you
other
excited?
ones.
Yeah. Why are
We
you excited about this one compared to the 28 unit hotel we were looking at?
Yeah, we were looking at this other hotel. What I like about this one is it's very easy for me to understand what the revenue is going to be like, because the units they're very similar. Like there's some studios, there's some one bedrooms, but the feel, they're essentially almost the same. Like I don't think those one bedrooms are that much different from the studios. I think they're going to be, they might
Right.
do a little bit more on, in terms of revenue, but it's all around the same ballpark. It's very easy to estimate like how much they'll be doing. I feel like it's also because the units are very similar. It's going to be pretty easy to run these things for us as well. Plus, um, no, I lost my chain of thought. That was one other reason. Oh yeah, I think it's the perfect size for us.
Mm,
9 units.
yeah. 9 units. Yeah. So to kind of give everyone some background, we were looking at a 28 unit hotel that was on 5 different lots, right? So it was an old lodge, and then they expanded and bought up all the surrounding properties. So it was a mix of like a traditional lodge hotel with 2 or 3 additional lots that were full of like cabins and kind of cabins and single family A-frame stuff like that. But it was a mix of like a hotel room to a studio to a 1 bedroom to a 2 bedroom to a 4 bedroom, and they were kind of all over the place, right? Some were updated, some were not updated. The seller is not in an urgent position to sell. So yeah, like that one we were like, okay, this is a challenge to kind of put together. It's also going to be a challenge to kind of run uh as a whole, and the price was much higher too, double the price
Mhm.
essentially. So why do you say 9? So this is 9 units that we're looking at. Why do you say 9 units is the perfect amount for us right now?
Because it's more units than we currently have, right? We currently have like the 4 cabins, so I feel like going up, buying the next one, and having like 9 units on top of that is a nice. It's nice because it's more, right? So we're scaling up, but it's not crazy. Like I don't know. I feel
Mm,
like with the one that's like 26, and then there's different types of units. I don't know. I feel like I'm not sure what I'm getting into, and I feel like it's such a
right.
big jump from what we're currently doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So 9 units. This is all right. So let's break it down and let's go through kind of like what we're learning from this right now. Let me kind of talk about how we came across it first
Yeah.
off, right? So we were looking at the other hotel that had 28 units, and a mix of lodges to A-frames to cabins. And we're looking at that one and we see a big vision of kind of merging the bigger hotel with our current development of the 4 units plus the additional 10 to 15 other units that we're trying to get approved to develop on, and being able to have a pretty large amount of units over the next few years in that one area. As we're negotiating and we're trying to figure out how much we can pay on this other one, I've been building relationships, and this is something that we teach in Legends X. The property abundance plan is it's the last training that we bring our students through. I've been implementing the property abundance plan, really connecting with agents in this huge region of multiple different towns, from Palm Springs to Big Bear, right, and everything in between. So was able to meet an agent who sold a hotel in one of those areas about 8 months ago. And I would just reach out with an email. Hey, what's going on? This is what we're doing. This is the vision of Freewyld. We're looking for these types of properties. If you have anything come up, let us know, blah, blah, blah. Excuse me. So I was consistently reaching out to them, out to him. Long story short, the owners of this property, they need to sell. They're in a situation where they have to sell. they somehow connected with this agent. This agent has not yet listed this property on the market, but he knew that we were active buyers, and he knew that we're building this brand in this region. So he brought it to us first before they brought it to the market. So we were one of two investors that are currently looking at this property. Now we just submitted an offer, and we can go through those numbers, how we came up with it. But we are now in negotiations of acquiring this property and could be owning this in the next 30, 45 days, right? So the consistency of reaching out and building those relationships, of just slowly saying, this is what we're doing, this is the vision, this is where we're at, we're current property, we're, running numbers on this unit in this town, blah, blah, blah. Through those relationships, he was able to bring this to us. That's off, it's an off market deal, right?
Mhm.
I bring that up because we get a lot of questions from people of like, how do you scale? How do you scale? What's the secret sauce, the whole thing? And I'm like, consistency, man. Just like build those relationships and you will find these properties. So, and we did recognize that. Going back to what you just said, that the market has finally changed. It definitely has. It has gone from a seller's market to a buyer's market, right? Where the sellers they can kind of dictate where they were going, what offer they would take. When we bought Strawberry Creek Village, there was like 8 other offers there. We had to be, we were cash, we were closing 100% as is. We were moving fast, the whole thing, and we outbid most of the people that were there. There was 1 or 2 offers that were higher, but they had financing. So now we definitely notice it, that the market has shifted to where we now have more buying power or more buying negotiation because rates have shifted. And if you have the ability to buy cash and not have to deal with banks and mortgages, you can negotiate some good deals. So
Yeah.
that's where we're at now. Took us probably 2 days to run the numbers, do some background on this property. But dude, I'll tell you what, man, I'm freaking excited about it. I'm looking at the property now, all the rooms. I did the research. We can go into the numbers, but I really do think that we can, adding this to Freewyld portfolio after the design, we can increase this quite a bit. And I think we can plug into our existing systems of management, and it's not going to cost us too much more to run it. So
Yeah.
I'm excited about it, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very excited about it too. Like most of the deals that we looked at, I've always had kind of my reservations about them. This is the first one that I'm looking at where I'm like, okay, I feel 100% confident about this
Yeah.
thing. So
Yep.
yeah, I'm excited, man. Maybe you can explain a little bit about the process. I was just on a call with our Rising Star members, which are
Yep.
all our Legends X graduates. They go into our Rising Star Mastermind, and I share with them like, hey, we always share wins, on every single call. So I shared like, hey, we put in an offer on the hotel, and I could tell that the group was kind of like, well, how does that work? Like, how do you buy a hotel, or what's the process like? So why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's pretty freaking straightforward. It's pretty simple. It's like you're essentially, the thing is, we're not, once you get to bigger properties and you have staff, like the challenge about the 28 unit hotel that we're looking at, that requires staff to be there, right? We need maintenance. We need a general manager. That we were even considering carving out 1 unit to have a general manager live on site, the whole thing. This is 9 units, right? And we'll talk about the value add here, but one thing that I'm always looking for when we're looking at these properties is like, how do we, just like Strawberry Creek Village, how do we plug in something that has cash flow now, but then has the ability to expand, right? Additional units, right? So what I like about this one is that, one, it's only 9 units. So it's big enough to generate some decent cash flow on this, and it's running some decent cash flow now. 2 is it has an office that is not needed. We don't need a front desk person at this property, which is great. So we can convert that office to an additional unit. So we're adding right away an additional unit to the property. That's 10 units. Then there's a garage and additional land that we can add additional units to, right? How many at the end of the day, we're not sure, but it has room, I would say, anywhere between 2 and 4 additional tiny homes that we can add. So looking at that, I'm like, okay, this is a great property. We can buy it now. It's cash flowing. We renovate it, rebrand it, take it to the next level. We can increase the property rates, and we'll talk about that. But then we could also add additional income units to the property. So right away, I'm like, this is awesome. But the process, to go back to your question, the process is simple because on the 28 unit property, we were looking at how to acquire 5 different properties or 5 different lots with 28 units on it. We had to have essentially 2 staff members on that property, pretty much full time, 1 part time. So there's a lot of moving parts to that, right? This hotel that we're looking at, this boutique hotel, it's 9 units. We don't need, we can plug it into our staff members that we have and access to management companies in that area, right? And it's 100% remote, right? We can run this 100% remote.
Mm-hmm.
So that right away, I realized, I'm like, okay, this is going to be easier for us to acquire this property. The first step was coming up with the offer. We should go through those numbers of how we did that. Once we came up with the offer, I had to then script how we're going to create value for the owners that are going through a situation that have to sell this thing, right? So what I realized is like they want them, not only is money important to them, but an easy process of selling this thing was easy. And I said, hey, we will, this is a cash offer. We introduced it to our investor. He's like, yep, I'm in, I'm down for it. This is where we can be. So we first secured the thumbs up on the cash, right, to buy this thing. Then when we go to make the offer, I made the cash offer, but what I said is the only thing we're looking for is a inspection to the property. This is not contingent to an appraisal. We're not going to nitpick. We're only looking for major concerns, wiring issues, plumbing issues, foundation issues. Everything else, we're going to take it 100% as is, right? Once we get through the inspection period, we'll close within 1 to 2 weeks, right? My goal is to make it as easy as possible for them, for us to take over the keys and take over right away and give them the max amount of effort, right? Or max amount of profit from it. So once we go through that process, man, like it's just like Strawberry Creek Village. Once we close on it, we're taking over the business, we're taking over the property, and right away we're going into operating this thing from day one. And they already have bookings out for another 6 months or so, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the very first step for us is securing the numbers, coming up with our offer price. And then 3 was you went and spoke to the investor. I went and spoke to the sellers. And as you're securing the thumbs up on the cash, I'm negotiating where we can be at the purchase price. Now,
Yep.
we're going to find out in the next few days if we have a deal, but man, I feel really freaking good that we can come to an agreement on this one and take this over in the next 30 to 45 days.
So, and then just to add to that, we basically set a price, right, to the seller. We had to submit a proof of funds, right? So we had to show them like, hey, we actually have the cash to to be able to actually go ahead and buy this. So now we're waiting on them to come back on our offer, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So you and I came up with 3 different prices: the absolute ideal perfect world purchase price, the absolute max on where we can go with this. So of course we submitted right above our ideal purchase price, because our ideal purchase price was pretty low, right? So we went slightly above that with the anticipation that they're going to counter and we'll kind of come to the middle. Now, one thing to keep in mind too, especially on these types of deals, we're acquiring the hotel business, but then we're also acquiring the real estate, right? So once we go into due diligence on this, any major red flags that come up, we can always go back and figure it and renegotiate if we need to. I don't expect that to happen because we kind of took it all into consideration. But yeah, right now, once we submitted their proof of fund or our proof of funds, we're kind of just in the waiting period of them giving us a thumbs up or a counter on the offer. I'm expecting them to give a counter, but honestly, they're kind of in a position where they have to sell. So I'm hoping that comes to an agreement pretty quick on this.
And then let's say let's just say in an ideal world they'll accept our offer. I get it,
Yeah,
probably going to counter, but let's say they accept the offer, right? We then go into a due diligence process where we have a certain amount of time to do some research on the project, make sure that there's no, what you call it, like skeletons in the closet.
sure.
Is that what you call
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that, how long does that? I forgot. Like, I know we went through the process for Strawberry Creek, but how long does that typically take?
Yeah, I mean, so we put a 30-day inspection period in place, but for me, I want to kind of move as fast as possible on this, right? Because we are, yeah, I just want to take it over. If we buy this in a week or we buy this in 6 weeks, doesn't really impact us. We have the ability to take it over as fast as possible. The biggest challenge that we have, and everyone should keep this in mind, is like just the real estate industry and construction industry as a whole is it's a freaking mess. The amount of projects and how delayed people are, the whole thing. So finding a inspector that has the ability to inspect a hotel in that area in a timely manner and get us back an actual report, and then us carving out the time to truly understand the report, right? Make sure
Mhm.
that there's no major issues, because the inspectors, they're going to pull together like, oh, this light switch is broken and like this thing is
Yeah.
loose, blah blah blah. I really don't care I want to know about that stuff. I don't really care about it. I want to know, is the foundation good? Is the roof good? Windows, do all the windows need to be replaced? Is there any knob and tube wiring in this property, right? Because it was built in the 40s or 50s, so it's pretty old, right? So is there any wiring in there that needs to be ripped out? And if that's the case, are we looking at a $20,000, repair list that we weren't really anticipating, or is that going to be much higher, right? So our goal is to, within 30 days, get the inspection, do all the due diligence, go to the county and find out, can we actually build on this? Is this even a legal hotel, right? Is
Mhm.
this even
Yeah.
a legal operating hotel, right? Because this isn't on the market. We're not 100% sure of all the information. So we have to go through that process to truly get it. I feel good about all that stuff, but that's part of the due diligence process. Hopefully we'll be owning this the next 30 to 45 days. That's the goal.
It's pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean, you can go faster if we want, I'm sure. I've purchased properties before in 7 days, right?
Yeah.
In Jersey. It's just like,
Yeah.
but this is a bigger deal. So yeah, and the project behind this, it's an operating business now. It's in a great freaking location, like amazing location. They're running at a 90% occupancy currently, which is incredible. I did find out, I knew one of the old managers of this property. I reached out to that company and I spoke to them. They're like, hey, this property has been rocking and rolling for years. They've done some upgrades. Their their guests are a bit older, right? So an older community that goes there. So the property has been updated. It's not really modernized. It's not marketed to, on Airbnb and all of that correctly. So they're like, hey, it's perfect now, but there's a lot of room for growth within
Mhm.
there,
Yeah.
right? So once our goal is, once we acquire this, rebranding this, same thing with Strawberry Creek Village, rebranding this, fixing up the rooms, bringing the decor, the marketing, the check-in process, the whole thing to the next level, and then start targeting the guest avatar that meets the Freewyld brand, right? And then through that, we're also getting approvals, working on getting the approvals to add
Mhm.
additional units to the property.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when we took over Strawberry Creek, the the inspection report. That was such a long list of things. Like,
Yeah.
I remember going through that thinking like, holy crap, there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff that, we have to worry about. That was because I've never seen that before. Like, I've never bought anything
Okay.
like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, it's pretty standard, man. So like when they go through when you bring a property inspector out, what they're trying to do is just shine a light on all the things that need repair, that are dangerous to the property, that uh could have been installed or built incorrectly to the local building code. So all the things. The goal is for you to kind of walk into the property fully aware of what's happening with the property, right? So when I got that inspection report on Strawberry Creek, I knew like we took all the small items like I don't know, exposed wiring underneath the, floorboards in this property. And, the gutter system on this side is loose, or, the light switch here is broken. All that stuff, it's good to know because it saves us time to go through and recognize all
Mhm.
that stuff. But what we do there, we immediately add that into our renovation list, right? And we add that to the list. So when we hire our contractors, it's already added to a list of like, hey, fix this stuff. Just this is all the maintenance stuff we want you to take care of. And then we focus on what are the big emergency items, right? Because we could buy this property, and if we don't inspect it correctly, the foundation could be screwed up. Like I was looking at one property, one of the units here, and it was, looking at the foundation, I'm like, man, that looks like it needs to be repaired. That it looks like it needs to be replaced. So if we don't recognize this ahead of time, our budget, and we should go into numbers here in a second too and explain how
Mhm.
we came up with our offer.
Sure.
Our budget to redesign and renovate this thing could, we could add 50, 100, 200,000 to it. And then our cap rates and our income, just complete ROI just completely drops on the property.
Yeah.
So we just need to know that stuff ahead of time. But, from the construction world, I know you're not in the construction world. My knowledge of the construction world, I love that stuff because it's like a glimpse under, your hood of your car. You know what's happening, you know what to fix, and you decide what to fix first, right? So, but let's go into the numbers, man. Let's kind of walk people through our method of doing this. For the people that are listening that are buying boutique hotels and you have experience doing this, feel free to, shoot us an email, let us know your thoughts on how we're approaching the numbers. If there's something we're missing, something that you're learning, something that you do differently, we'll love to hear that from you. But
Yeah.
let's break it down, man. How can you, why don't you share with them how you came up with the numbers and your thought process behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, the first thing we want to look at is the revenue, right? Um, Not just like the revenue that they've been generating, but also the revenue that we think we could be generating, right? So obviously we're looking at the P&L. They actually they were doing a pretty reasonable job, I would say, with running this thing because they were at 90% occupancy. I'd say the ADR is a little on the low end, right? So I think there's room to grow there. But essentially, we looked at their P&L, but also we looked at their DNA, really researching the market to see like what could these units potentially do. And again, this was fairly easy for us because the units they're fairly similar, and we also have a unit that's comparable, right? It's not
Right.
completely the same, but it is comparable. So yeah, so we made a revenue estimate. Next thing to look into is expenses, right? What is it going to cost us to run these properties? Now we've been kind of analyzing a lot of deals, and expenses always end up somewhere around like the 40 to 50% range, right? But still,
Yeah.
like, I went through the whole list of expenses that they supplied. Um, and not all the expenses that they have, we would have, right? Because for example, they were spending a lot of money on marketing, for example, and there was some, I don't know, there was a lot of charges in there that I don't think we necessarily have to go for those expenses, but it's the standard stuff of like property taxes, insurance, gas, electric, the whole list. Came over the expenses, and then basically we looked at different scenarios, right? We looked at like what's our cap rate going to be if we are 70% occupied, 80%, 90% at different ADRs, right? If we increase the ADR by 10%, 20%, 30%, what does our cap rate look like? And then we looked at different investments, right? So if we invest X, what's our cap rate with all the ADRs and the occupancy percentages? So it's really like a scenario analysis to kind of understand like, okay, what's how much can we increase the revenue? How is that going to relate to the cap rate based on different amounts that we invest? And based
Yeah.
on that,
So
we get an idea of like if if the numbers work for us or not.
right. So yeah, so let's break that down a little bit. So you were talking about expense ratios, right? So this is something that, you know, we have a couple of friends that invest at a high level. They have a handful of different funds, and they're buying up RV parks and short-term rental communities around the country, right? And right away, there's a couple of things when you're in this industry and you're trying to buy these types of assets. These assets are wanted by, you know, they're popular assets, so you have a lot of demand. So you have to be able to have some type of ratio formula to be able to run the numbers and say, okay, within this ratio, expense ratio, our numbers still work, right? So what we found is most people, and we talked to a lot of people from legends to investor, friend of ours, and consultants, the whole thing. What we find is on average, like regular commercial real estate, it's like you're running it at a 50% expense ratio, right? So your total top line revenue minus 50%, then minus your debt ratio, right? Your debt income, or your debt servicing, I should say, right? And that usually brings you to your net income. What we found in hospitality, so when we were looking at that 28 unit, our expense ratio was higher, right? So this one we're running at 50% expense ratio. The 28 unit, we're running at a 60% because of the amount of labor that we had to bring into that specific property, right? So this is why I agree with you. This is why I like this 9 unit, because we're able to run it as short-term rentals. And I say this all the time, man. Like, the biggest opportunity in our industry right now is acquiring old vacation rental communities and converting them to modern short-term rental experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't need a front office, we don't need a general manager for a 9 unit. We can automate this entire experience, leverage our systems, leverage our contacts in that area. So now our expenses are going down compared to what they have, right? They had a staff of 2 people running this one, right? So we can run the numbers at a 50% expense ratio. And then our goal is just to continue to try to get that down a bit further, right? So just wanted to kind of break that down a bit for everybody. So yeah.
And I think we're even going to go a bit lower than 50, to tell you the truth. I think it's probably going to be more like 40 to 45 that we're going to be end up with, which is good. And also, you know, one thing to recognize too when we're looking at these things is, you know, let's say current revenue is 500,000 and current expenses 250, just to make it simple, right? If we can add 20% more revenue, right, and bring it from 5 to 600, right, that's not going to raise our expenses necessarily, right? So if we can keep the expenses at the same level, but we're adding an extra 100,000 in revenue, which is just 20%, it's not crazy when you modernize it and you improve the experience, right? Now we're looking at, instead of 250 profit, we're looking at 350 profit, right? Which is 40% increase, right? So by increasing revenue 20%, we're increasing profit by 40%. If we can keep those expenses at the same level. Obviously, if we're going to be investing in like hot tubs and things like that, expenses will go up, right? But if we're just improving the Airbnb listings, we're improving our guest communication, we're improving the experience, right? That's not going to cost us any. That's not going to raise the cost, right? So I think that's important to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's an awesome way of looking at that, right? And I like the way that you broke out the performa here as well. It's like you have your cap rate, right? Or I'm sorry, you have your regarding revenue. We're looking at, can we increase ADR and revenue by 10%, 20%, or 30%, right? But then it's also, you built out a formula. Can we increase occupancy if we're hitting occupancy at 70%, 80%, and 90% based on those increases as well? I thought that was a really good way of looking at it, right? This property currently is running roughly around 90% occupancy, but their rates are actually lower than where they need to go. So I don't know if we can increase, you know, occupancy to 100%, right? Or 95%. Our goal would be to, how do we keep occupancy between 80 and 90, right? But increasing our ADR. And, you know, looking at what they currently have, even just going in and just taking the baseline where it's at now, I mean, I feel freaking confident, man. Like looking at our numbers that we can increase ADR by 30%, increase, revenue by 30%, which is unbelievable. If
Yeah.
we can keep, and then if we can keep it at 90%, I mean, the returns are absolute 90% occupancy. The returns are pretty incredible.
Yeah, if we are able to do that at the price that we have put the offer on, our cap rate would go to 15% plus, in that
Right.
scenario, which is that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's great, especially for Southern California,
Yeah.
right? Like you can't cap rates here in California are laughable, right? But this is what I'm talking about, man. Like, and I know people are tapping into this and they have been for a while, but now that we're in this, I'm seeing that the biggest opportunity for real estate investors and operators are finding these types of assets in markets that you can maintain those higher occupancies of 70 to 90%. Seasonal markets, I'm not sold on, right? Like the Jersey Shore, where I started my vacation rental business or journey. You only have 3-4 months a year to really run that at a high level, right? Here we have the opportunity to run 70 to 90% all year round, right? Which is incredible. Yeah. So the income on that property is unreal. Plus we get to tie it into our existing project.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually interesting. Like the winters are very popular in our market, right? Like people are really excited about there might be some snow. It's funny. I remember the first time we had some snow. Like all these people were reaching out in Airbnb, like, "Is there snow? Like we want to see snow. I've never seen snow." And I was like, "Wait, you've never seen snow?" But yeah, that's California, right?
Oh man, it's so funny. I meet people here in San Diego that have lived here their entire lives and never have been to Idlewild. They might have been to like Big Bear or Mammoth, which is obviously known for skiing and snowboarding and snow and all that stuff. But being able to drive 2 hours from San Diego and be in the mountains with snow during the winter just like blows people's minds. And we freaking love it. I love it up there during fall because all the trees are turning. You're like, this is unreal. And then wintertime, you're in, snow and that whole thing. So there's really only one small season where it slows down. And it's kind of right now when it's really hot, right? But outside of that, I mean, the market is pretty solid. So yeah, man. So anything else on the numbers?
No, that's it, man. I gotta run soon too. So we gotta wrap this up here.
Let's keep going, man. I love this conversation. Well, this is what we'll do. We'll update everybody. We're still not on social media yet. We've kind of been, hermits to with our head in the sand when it comes to social media and kind of sharing anything outside of this podcast. But we are changing that. We're getting to a point where starting in about a couple of weeks, we've hired some team members to help us with this. So we're going to be sharing our updates as we go. Let's touch back in on this deal, if not next week, the following week, kind of give everybody an update on where we're at. I feel really freaking good about this, man. I feel like we're going to buy this thing. The investors excited. It's in good alignment. So hopefully we'll be adding 9 units, and then with the development of Freewyld, and this one, we can add potentially an additional 13 to 18 units on top of all of this, right? With the additional conversions, which is great. So then we have a real sizable project up there. So, but anyway, man, this has been awesome. Hopefully we have some good news for everybody next week.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that we're going to buy this. I'm super excited about it. And I'm also excited that I'll finally be able to actually visit next month in October. I've been looking at flights. If you've been listening to this podcast, you probably know I've been applying for a work visa, and that's kept me from being able to fly to the US and visit. But I'm gonna get my my resolution. It's either I'm gonna get approved or not. Either way, I'm gonna be able to travel. So super excited to come down and actually stay at some of these units and check out all these hotels that we've been looking at. So
Yeah. So what's the plan? So we're going to Panama for a offsite, which is going to be exciting. But then when we get back, we're connecting here in San Diego. You're going to go see the properties, and then we're going to VRMA in
That's right.
Vegas, right? All right.
Yep. It's just gonna
Lots of
be a fun
travel,
trip.
man. I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I'm excited for it. I'm super excited to go to Idlewild. I'm excited to go to VMRA. If you're listening to this, be prepared. We're gonna throw some parties. We're gonna do some fun things out there. So
That's right.
it's gonna be awesome. All right, man. I gotta run. It was great talking to you. This is super fun. I'm excited. I hope to the listeners. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. Have a great weekend. We'll update you in the next couple of weeks. A lot of stuff going on, also with Legends X. So we'll update you guys. Have a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday. See you then.
Peace out.